At 08:43 hours local time, a drone dropped out of the gray morning sky and slammed into the radar dome of the A-50 parked on the apron at Machulishchy. 200 grams of explosive and 200 steel balls tearing into the one structure that made the aircraft a working machine. It happened just 7.5 miles from the center of Minsk. The target it hit was worth around $330 million, according to open reporting. The machine that hit it had cost a few thousand. One of a handful of drones anyone could buy in a shop, worth perhaps $15,000 for all of them together, a ratio of more than 20,000 to 1. And the crews guarding that aircraft never understood how anything so small had gotten through. The thing on the apron was an A-50U. NATO calls it the Mainstay. It is a flying radar, a 4-engine aircraft the size of an airliner, with a giant dish spinning under a dome on its back. From high above the front, it can watch hundreds of miles of sky at once and track dozens of targets in a single sweep. Russia operates only a handful of them, which makes each one almost irreplaceable. This one had been flying missions over Ukraine from Belarusian soil. It was parked in the open, inside a ring of surveillance radar, missile batteries, and jammers. A target the defenders considered untouchable. They had reason to feel safe. But the operation against them had not started with explosives. It had started weeks earlier, with cameras. The men behind it were Belarusian partisans, a pro-Ukrainian resistance network of former security officers who knew exactly how their own state guarded its airfields. In the days before the strike, they flew scouts over the base, the same commercial quadcopters, carrying cameras instead of warheads. The little machines slid in low and slow, mapping the exact spot where the aircraft parked, the rhythm of the guards, the road the fire trucks used. One scout even settled onto the dome of the A-50 itself, sat there for a moment, and lifted off again, untouched, unnoticed. That single flight had exposed the flaw at the heart of the whole base. Every layer protecting the A-50 was built to stop fighter jets and cruise missiles. Fast, high, metal. Not a plastic toy crawling along at walking pace. The partisans did not need to shoot a 190-ton aircraft out of the sky. They only needed to reach it on the ground, and the scouts had just proven they could. What none of them knew yet was that the first drone sent in would appear to fail completely, and that the failure itself would be exactly what opened the door. On the morning of the strike, there was no more scouting, only the strike. The 6 armed drones came in 2 waves, and the first wave was 3, the same commercial airframe as the scouts, rebuilt into weapons. They crossed the tree line, hugging the ground, moving at the unhurried pace of a man on a bicycle. The base had a wide area surveillance network watching the entire sky, and it reported nothing. A drone this small, this slow, this low gives back a radar return almost impossible to separate from the trees and snow behind it. The network had been tuned to flag fighters and missiles, so it did the sensible thing and ignored a contact crawling along at walking speed. In effect, it deleted the threat on its own. No alarm went up. The drones had less than a mile left to fly before a short-range battery finally caught them. That battery was a Tor M2. It is a tracked, self-contained point defense system, the last hard shield around a high-value site, built to knock low-flying targets out of the sky with radar-guided missiles, several ready to fire at once. On paper, it is exactly the weapon for this job. It can reach out and kill something flying low from miles away, and it can do it in seconds. Against a slow-moving drone in clear air, it should have been no contest at all. But the Tor carries a flaw the partisans were counting on, and it is a flaw of physics, not of the crew. Its missiles need room to arm. Fired at something too close, the warhead simply cannot go live in time. There is a minimum range, a dead zone hugging the launcher, inside which the weapon is useless. Think of a boxer with a long reach and a heavy punch, devastating at arm's length. But let the opponent step inside his elbows and all that power has nowhere to land. The drones were built to step inside the elbows, and here the numbers turned against the defenders. The Tor's radar locked the lead drone and began building a firing solution. The seconds of tracking a missile needs before it can be trusted to fly true. But building that solution took almost the entire time the drone needed to cross the final stretch of open ground. The crew watched 2 clocks run at once, the solution assembling and the range collapsing. They finished a heartbeat too late. By the time the launcher was ready, the drones had already slipped under the floor, into the dead zone where the Tor's missiles could not arm. The most capable weapon on the base fell silent, not jammed, not destroyed, simply outweighted by 3 toys that had walked straight into its blind spot. So the Tor did the only thing left. It handed the problem to the jammers. And the jammers had a clock of their own, one that was already running out. A counter-drone jamming team was already swinging toward the threat. Its job was to break the invisible thread between each drone and the operator flying it, to flood the airwaves with noise until the command and video links drowned, leaving the machine deaf, blind, and drifting. On paper, this fight was the jammers to win. It could overpower a drone's control signals from more than a mile out. Reach was never the problem. Time was the problem. A jammer does not work the instant it points at a target. It has to find the right frequency, lock onto it, and pour enough power down that exact channel to smother the link. A full cycle that can take anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Picture trying to jam a stranger's phone call when you don't know their number. First, you have to find the number, then dial it hard enough to drown their voice. By the time you've dialed, the call may already be over. The drone spent barely a minute inside the jammer's reach. The math never favored the machine that was supposed to win easily. The jammer reached them late and did just enough damage to matter in the worst possible way. 2 of the 3 video feeds broke into static. Those 2 operators, suddenly flying blind, felt their drones drift offline. They corrected from memory. It was not enough, and here the operation appeared to come apart completely. The lead drone, the one feed still holding steady, was picked off short of the apron, shot out of the air. A clean failure, or so it seemed. And the 2 that were drifting never reached the aircraft at all. Already blind, already shoved off their lines, they crossed the nose of the A-50 and slammed one after the other into a fuel storage building 100 meters beyond it. For half a second, it looked like a disaster. 1 drone down, 2 more wasted on a shed. The most valuable aircraft in the Russian fleet still sitting untouched on the apron. Then the fuel went up. A wall of orange fire climbed off the building, and thick black smoke rolled flat across the apron in the cold morning air. Every alarm on the base went off at once. Fire and rescue trucks tore out of their bays and drove straight across the open ground in front of the aircraft. Crews ran toward the flames, and the smoke, drifting low between the defenders and the sky, turned the whole apron into a gray wall. The 2 wasted drones had not been wasted at all. They had just blinded the base. Because 90 seconds behind them, moving at the same walking pace, the second wave was already crossing the fence. 3 more drones, held back for exactly this moment. And this was the wave that mattered. 3 drones, 3 routes. The operators called them Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Alpha went for the dome on the aircraft's back, Bravo for the cockpit and the mission gear packed in behind it, Charlie for the inboard engines and the wing. 3 targets, 1 aircraft, and a defense that was now distracted and half blind. The Tor crew tried again. They ran into the same wall as before, only worse. The first wave had been 3 contacts on roughly 1 line. Now there were 3 more, spread wide apart, and already inside the dead zone where the missiles could not arm. A firing solution is worthless against a target under the floor. The launcher stayed silent. The jammer team swung toward the new drones and lost the seconds they needed. 1 cycle, 3 headings. The clock had never been on their side, and now it ran out entirely. 1 feed flickered. All 3 drones kept flying, straight down the lines already loaded into them, no longer needing a link at all. The perimeter guards saw the second wave last. Close, rifles up, and they could not fire. Behind the drones stood the burning fuel store, the rescue trucks crossing open ground, the ground crews, the aircraft itself. Every direction was full of their own people. There was a clean line of fire for only a handful of seconds, and in those seconds, a man had to spot the target, know it for a threat, decide it was safe to shoot, lead it, and pull. They held their fire, Those few seconds were all the drones needed. Alpha reached the dome first. It struck the base of the structure and detonated. 200 grams of explosive, 200 steel balls tearing outward across the skin and the antenna faces. A small charge alone could never gut an aircraft this size, but the steel balls did what the charge could not. They shredded a wide arc of the dish and its wiring, turning the single most valuable part of the airframe into torn metal. Flames climbed the spine of the aircraft. The firefighters turned toward the burning dome, which was the exact moment Bravo arrived at the front. It dropped toward the forward fuselage, over the cockpit and the mission bay behind it, and the blast tore the nose section open. Fragments and heat reached past the skin into the wiring and the avionics, the nervous system that turned a spinning dish into a picture of the sky. Charlie came in last, on the far side, while the crews were still split between the dome and the nose. It struck the inboard engine and the wing root, and a fuel and oil fire opened up beneath the wing. 3 fires now, on one aircraft: the dome, the nose, the wing, with the fuel building still burning 100 meters away. There were not enough hands on that apron. The eye that had watched all of Ukraine's sky was going dark in front of the very defenses built to keep it safe. So what did the strike actually destroy? Here the honest answer is, it depends on who you ask. And the gap between the two answers is its own story. The partisans said the damage was severe. BYPOL reported 2 explosions that tore into the front and central sections of the aircraft and wrecked the radar antenna, the very heart of the machine, and declared the A-50 finished, unable to fly anywhere. The other side told a smaller story. Belarusian authorities first called the damage minor, then admitted the aircraft had to be sent back to Russia for repairs. And when commercial satellite imagery came in from Maxar and Planet Labs a few days later, it showed the A-50 still largely intact on the flight line, with only some shading on the radome and a wing that might, or might not, be damage rather than snow. Within days, the aircraft reportedly flew out of Belarus and back into Russia. So the truth sits somewhere in the contested middle. This was almost certainly not a clean kill, but a rare and expensive aircraft was struck, and it left for a repair depot instead of a runway. What is not in dispute is that it was hit at all, and that is where the real damage lives. Not in the metal, but in the math. Russia operates only a small number of A-50s. Every one is close to irreplaceable, and every one now has to be guarded, as if a $15,000 box of consumer drones could reach it, because one just did, 7.5 miles from the center of Minsk, inside the best air defenses in Belarus. The aircraft did not lose because its defenders were fools. They shot 1 drone out of the sky and watched 2 more burn against a shed, and it still was not enough. The surveillance net was tuned for jets. The Tor was built for targets beyond arm's length. The jammer was built to win a fight that lasted longer than these drones gave it. Every system on that base worked exactly as designed. The design was the flaw. Each layer had been built for a war of fast, expensive, visible things, and lost to something slow, cheap, and beneath its notice. That is the shift worth watching. For 100 years, the hardest targets were protected by making the attack expensive. You needed a jet, a missile, a trained crew. That equation is breaking. When the cheapest thing in the sky can reach the most valuable thing on the ground, no amount of armor around the target fixes the problem, because the problem is the assumption underneath it. Somewhere outside another airfield, the same kind of drone is already lifting off. If this breakdown was worth your time, subscribe. We take apart one of these operations every week. And tell me below, when the 20,000 to 1 drone becomes normal, what's the first untouchable target that stops being untouchable? I'll be reading the replies.